Okay, so in the last video we talked about what money is, the function of money, defining money, and how we use money today. It's all fiat. I don't know of anybody around the world today who uses commodity money. I could be wrong, but I don't know anybody. So today let's talk about how, or now next video let's talk about how we measure money, how much money there is. Common question: how much money is there in the world? Well, we try to keep track of it, right? The Federal Reserve is who does this in the United States of America. Usually it's some central bank somewhere in whatever country you're looking at. We'll get into how they create it more so in the next video, or the next section rather. But this video, I just kind of talk about the number or the words you're going to hear when we're talking about the different kinds of money that exist. You need to know these before we can talk about how money is created. So the supply of money is tracked through money aggregates. Okay, so I know that seems weird and confusing. You're probably not going to see money aggregates ever again, but what you will see are these M numbers, these money aggregate numbers, M0 or MB, M1, and M2. Yes, it goes beyond that. However, the Federal Reserve no longer tracks past M2. Okay, so there are like M3 and things like that, but they don't matter. Right? It's just how abstract do you want to get. So the supply of money is tracked through money aggregates. They're right here. We'll go through each one. And it's basically just how much money there is in different forms. M0, or sometimes called MB, or sometimes called narrow money, because it's the narrowest definition of the term money. But M0, MB is the monetary base. This is cash in circulation and in bank vaults. And that's it. All right, so cash in circulation and cash reserved in bank vaults. Notice how that is separate from all of these other ones here. All right, there's currency, there's cash, and then there's cash in the vaults, and that is M0. And that is, this little bit here is only counted in M0. All right, this is not money that you and I touch. So M0, it's money that exists. It's cash in circulation and in the vaults, these reserves, and we'll talk about reserves and stuff in the next section. That's fractional reserve banking. But that's only counted in MB. All right, so MB, M0, it's only counted there, the monetary base. That is one of the biggest things you need to pay attention to, because if you ever see a question that asks about defining M0 or MB, and you see something that says money in bank vaults, you're going to be able to identify it really quickly. So make sure you keep that mental image there if you can. Currency in the vaults, the reserve currency. That's M0 and B. Next up, we're getting a little bit more abstract. We have cash. Cash again. All right. So cash is in M1. But now we're also going to include money in the checking accounts, which are demand accounts, they're sometimes called. Like if you want that money, you have access to that money right now, right away. Like it's right there available for you. And then traveler's check. Traveler's checks are still a thing. I don't know if I have not used the traveler's check in over 15 years. They used to be more common if you were to go overseas. Today, debit cards and credit cards have kind of taken the place of traveler's checks, but they were still money that you would have had access to pretty much right away. So demand deposits, checkable deposits, traveler's checks, things like that, they will be in M1. So we're including currency in circulation, we're including cash, but now we're also including the money in your bank account. And you're like, wait a second, isn't it the same thing? No, it's not. And hold on, we'll talk about that in the next section. Notice that M1 does not include the reserves, the currency that's held in the vaults. So that's M0 only. The monetary base is separate over here. M1, though, is including all the cash and also the demand deposits. So, and we'll talk about why that is. Notice it's not having savings deposits. Let's look over here. Oh, so M1 is cash plus money in checking accounts, money that you have access to pretty much right away. You use your debit card, that's M1. M2, though, is cash plus demand, basically all of these things, so all of M1, plus the money that's in savings and different types of money market accounts. Savings oftentimes are harder to access, and you're not supposed, if you have a savings account, you're not supposed to be constantly taking money in it or taking money out of it. That's what checking accounts are for, and that's why banks have different types of accounts. Savings are for, get this, saving money and setting it aside. So that's not money that's supposed to be readily accessible, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes especially different types of banking deposits you might have, you might not have access to that money for a couple of days or maybe even weeks, depending on how the accounts are set up. So M2 is cash, demand accounts, and then money that's harder to get to. And we'll talk about how this actually happens and stuff. It's a strange system, but this is how the world works, and we'll get into the next section. But basically, it's how liquid the money is, how easily it can be accessed. So M2 is a little less liquid right here. Like this part right here is more illiquid, and so it's harder to get to. M1 is a lot easier to get to, and M0 is basically just cash. The bank reserve vaults, in fairness, are out of the system, so that's different. But cash is cash. M1 is readily accessible liquid money, and M2 is getting less liquid, and obviously that M3, which isn't even tracked anymore, so don't worry about it. M3 is even more abstract, harder to get to, harder value to access. So that's how we count money, basically, how much money there is. So how much money is there? A lot. Like I said, if you want to, you could look up online. The Federal Reserve System tracks these numbers here. I didn't put it at M0. Oh, well, whatever. Who cares? But you can see here that M1, we're getting a little bit, this is cash in circulation, essentially demand deposits, and this is in billions of dollars. And then over here, M2 getting more abstract, once again in billions of dollars. So there is a lot of money. That's all you really need to know. You're not going to need to know that. You need to know the concepts. You need to know this stuff. You don't need to know the dollar amounts for this class. All right, let's do some review questions. So which of the following best describes the monetary aggregate M1? So take a second and look at this. All right, so hopefully you've looked at it and figured it out. There's a few things that you should always look for. Currency in vaults. Well, that can't be M1 because currency in vaults, that's the reserve. That is only for M0, the monetary base. So that takes this one, also gold bricks. I haven't talked about that at all. So that's not right. So these two are obviously out. All right, so that leaves us with these three here. Well, let's look. Well, we said M1, which is readily accessible money. So that's what you need to know. M1 is like you have your debit card, you've got cash in hand. That's what M1 basically is. Don't worry so much about traveler's checks. Well, okay, so savings accounts. Savings accounts are not supposed to be readily accessible. That's money that you shouldn't have a debit card tied to your savings account. They're tied to your debit credit accounts, or your checking accounts. So anyways, savings accounts, that's M2. So right now, those ones are wrong. So the answer must be currency in circulation. So that's cash moving around. Demand deposits, so your checking accounts, and of course traveler's checks, which, one day they're probably going to cut out of this class. But yeah, that's still a thing. All right. Which of the following best explains why a $20 bill is money, but a share of stock is not money? I've got a stock worth $100. I want to buy a Big Mac. Take my stock. Like you walk into McDonald's and you try to give them a share in McDonald's even. Let's say it's a share in McDonald's. They're not going to accept that. Why not? Right? Stocks have value. Right? Stocks have value. You buy and sell stocks. That is a valued asset. Why is it that they would accept a $20 bill but not a stock? You got to think about liquidity. So, and how how it can be used for transactions, right? Stocks are not super liquid. You have to turn stocks into money. You sell the stock, get cash from it, sell that asset, get cash from it, and then you can use it as a medium of exchange. So the $20 bill is used as a medium of exchange, but the stock cannot be used to purchase anything. It's not liquid. It's more illiquid. So you need to turn it into money so that it can be used as a transaction. That's basically it. You may have an expensive house. You might be very wealthy, but if you don't have $20, you don't get a Big Mac. All right, unless you sell your house. Get a lot of dollars. Get a lot of Big Macs. All right, this one's a little more complicated. The values of several types of assets in Hamsterville are given in the table below. I'm not going to read all these right now. I'm going to look at the question. What is the value of M1 in Hamsterville? Ooh. Okay, so let's think about what we don't want to include, because there's a lot of information here, right? So cash in the vaults, remember, that's only M0, right? That's the monetary base, so we're not going to include that one. So cash in the vaults at the banks, $100, forget about it. Cash held by the public, okay, well, that's money in transactions, so that's probably going to be included. All right, so cash held by the public, that's money that's used for transactions right now, so 200 millions here, 200 is going to be included. Traveler's checks, yes, that is money that is readily available, readily used, and can be used for purchases, so traveler's checks will be included. So if we're totaling up the value of M1, we have 200 plus 20, so 220 so far. Balance of all checkable deposits. You go to the grocery store and you write a check. That is money that is readily available, or you today would checkable deposits, you'd probably use a debit card, right? It comes out of your bank account immediately instead of having to go through a checking system. So balance of all checkable deposits, well, that's also readily available. Remember, M1, super liquid, readily available money. So 200, 220 plus 400, now we're up at 620. Let's look at the next ones. Balance of all savings accounts, savings are harder to get to. That's M2, not that one. CDs, certificate of deposit, CD accounts, nope, not going to be in there. That's harder to get to. Money market mutual funds. I know we haven't even talked about what a mutual fund is, but mutual funds are basically like combinations of stocks and other assets. No, that's harder to get to. You'd have to, these are less liquid, essentially. You have to turn them into more liquid money. So we said that these things are, these ones right here, these middle-ish ones, 220, and then 400, 620. So M1 should be $620 million. All right, I think this might be the last question. Which of the following best describes the difference between fiat money and commodity money? Take a second and think of that one over. Fiat and commodity. All right. Commodity money has intrinsic value, but fiat money does not. Right? So remember, we said commodities, gold, silver, prison cigarettes. These are things that have intrinsic value. Right? We look at it and say, well, gold and silver is shiny. We can turn it into jewelry. We can smoke cigarettes. Don't smoke. Fiat currency, though, is just little pieces of paper with numbers and faces on it, and that's has no value other than the value that the government and the Federal Reserve says that it has. And because we all accept that, then it has value. So it's not intrinsic, it's not built in, it's not baked in. Now, I do want to point out, talking about value, I do want to point this out. There's a concept called the paradox of value. And it's an old concept, but the paradox of value is an interesting one. Like, why is it that gold and silver are considered to have value and have a high value, where other things that actually are necessities of life and survival have a lower value? Because intrinsic value is an interesting thing. Like, we say gold and silver has value, but why? Well, it's partly because our brains are wired that way. We like shiny rocks. As stupid as that is. So like things like diamonds have a high value. They're also very rare, right? And today they have some industrial purposes, no doubt. For most of history, they didn't. But for most of history, diamonds had a high value, whereas water, clean air, things like that have a very low value. It's sometimes referred to as the paradox of value. If you're interested, look up this concept. But it's sort of an interesting thing. Saying something has intrinsic value does anything actually have intrinsic value? Sometimes things that are very useful have very low value to it. Things that aren't useful have a high value. We're a weird species. We're a weird group of monkeys. So anyways, if you really want to go down a rabbit hole there, start thinking about what value actually is. But anyways, I'll leave you there with this one. Next section, we're going to get into basically how banks work and how money is created. And yeah, money is created. It's created every single day. And we'll get into that in the next section.